So let's go back and look at everything in editing. It's a lot, but it's also something you can do a piece at a time. Every time you sit down to edit, look back on the two main points. Structure, which is the story and the flow, and let's call it efficiency, removing repetitions and diversions and keeping the story moving. So structure, who or what is the video about? Going back to the basics, a story is about a person who has an obstacle or problem, who tries to get over those obstacles but goes through some challenges and then overcomes that problem in some manner. In the example we've been using throughout this editing section, the story is about a kid's experience going through the Avocacy Center. They've likely been abused. They're scared for what comes next. The video is about what's being done to make them feel better and to minimize the trauma that they go through, moving towards healing. Everything that's about that is important. Everything that's not about that kid, maybe it's better for a separate video. Now, a quick note here about a trap that's really easy to fall into. Trying to make it all better too soon in the story. This can be tricky because you want the story to show how your organization helps, but you also need it to lay out in a way that people engage with it. This video looks at the kids' journey in stages because that's how the organization works with them. So it starts with the fear and what they've gone through. Then it goes through the interview and some small ways that those fears are hopefully assuaged, then towards the healing with the medical and the therapy team, into the final takeaways. So through most of our story, the kid remains scared and honestly hurt. That's tough. Even as I'm spelling it out here, it's uncomfortable to talk about it like this, but that's what the story needs to make it felt. If we talk too quickly about the healing process and the real help, well, then there's nothing at stake in the story and it feels too easy. Without taking the audience on that journey with the kid, where the kid feels scared and needs help, we don't care as much because we don't feel it. But when the help comes as the story progresses, well, now it means more if we've been there with that kid. Take a look at the finished piece, or at least where the video's at right now.
Before a kid comes through the CAC, they're scared. They don't know what to expect.
They don't know. They don't know what's going to come next, you know. Am I going to be taken away? Is my dad going to go to jail? Am I going to ruin the family?
They've just had this horrific thing happen to them, and they have all of these people that want to talk to them. So coming to a place like this, I think would have to be scary up front.
The unknown is truly the biggest dynamic when a child comes in.
But we hope that once they walk through the doors that they see that there's a team of people who want to work with them. The first thing they see when they walk through the door are leaves on our wall that represent every kid that has come through the Child Advocacy Center.
Every child that comes in gets to do a leaf. We're up to over 2,000 leaves, and so we try to show them like you are not alone in this process.
I've seen kids that when we've told them that, you can see the relief come over them because they know that you know what's happened to them is happened to other kids and they're not alone. And that starts their healing process. While the family advocate is working with the family doing paperwork and talking about resources in the community, our interviewer will come in and take that child for their interviews.
I have them sit in a chair with a blanket and a pillow on it, and then I sit right across from them, and then we get the interview started.
Our interviewer will have them go through things like who lives in your home, what kinds of things do you do for fun, and then they may move into naming all of the body parts so that we're calling the body part the same thing that the child's calling it. And then they go through the abuse scenario.
And so I, interviewed a kid today where he just sat there and played with the strings on the blanket the entire time.
Our interviewers are really good at building rapport with kids. You really only want them to do one interview, is that they're not having to talk to 15, 20 different people about what's happened to them.
A lot of times that'll lead to like re-traumatizing the child when you're having to say it over and over. I think that they start to get questions of, do they not believe me? Am I saying something wrong? I said it one time and then my dad was taken away.
When the interview is taking place, we have investigating agencies in an observation room.
So I wear an earpiece and they have a microphone.
And they're able to talk to the interviewer during the process and ask additional questions.
Your child protective services, law enforcement, you can have prosecution.
You want those individuals in that room being able to ask all questions that they need for their investigation so that that kid's not having to come back through and do additional follow-up interviews.
And that's a huge, huge piece of what we do because we do want to limit the number of times that a child has to tell.
So that the child's not having to relive everything that happened to them.
the child might, then go to the sexual assault nurse examination room.
And we do those because more often than not, you're going to not have any physical evidence, but more to let these kids know that their body's okay. They're not broken, helps them understand that they can heal from what happened to them. And the nurse looks at them and says, yep, everything's normal. And that's powerful for them.
And then they'll make a plan of, okay, are we gonna, get you in therapy?
So we have an on-site therapist.
Every child that comes through has the right to heal from their trauma.
Healing is huge for kids. We want to break the cycle of abuse. And for them to get these services early on, that makes a huge difference in breaking that cycle.
I hope that every kid leaves here feeling better than they did when they came in.
I think that is huge for a kid to hear that they are believed. And I think that we've had people tell us, and we've had kids tell us that that has made a world of difference to them, to know that they were believed by somebody.
I've interviewed over 500 kids, and I like to say that that's 500 faces that I'll never forget.
We would all love to work ourselves out of a job. It'd be awesome if we didn't have a child advocacy center or a CASA program and kids weren't coming into care because they were abused or neglected. We'd all have to find something different to do, but wouldn't that be awesome?
You might notice that I stole the faces idea from the Women's Center video we talked about earlier for the ending of this one. They're for different audiences in different parts of the country, so I think I can get away with it. But don't worry to steal from yourself. People aren't as invested in your videos as you are, and they usually won't notice or even care if things are similar across different videos, unless it gets pretty blatant, and even then. But I really wanted to add some emotion to that final section, and I think the faces helped to build that. But looking at efficiency, even though the video is over 4 minutes long, it moves pretty well. Each section is less than a minute before moving to a new room or a new idea, and that's the other part. Alongside the structure, it has to be engaging, which is just a fuzzy way of saying it has to be entertaining. It has to keep moving forward enough to keep the audience's attention. What's great about video and getting an idea across is that the video always moves forward linearly. One thing follows another thing, followed by another thing. But what's terrible about video is that it always moves forward linearly, and if it's not efficient in its storytelling, one thing follows another, which follows another. You sat through a video or a movie, it's just too long, and you're waiting for anything interesting to happen. You know what I'm talking about. You have to make tough choices of what to keep and what to lose, and sometimes it can feel pretty vicious to remove things from the story, but usually about 2 days later, you can forget what was removed and start to see how much stronger the video is without the parts that were slowing it down. Editing, it's really about putting the time in, along with the time away to look at it with fresh eyes until the video works. There's not really a shortcut to that other than experience, and experience just makes the process a little faster. But once you get comfortable with the process, like I said at the start of these lessons, there is nothing more fun than when you're really getting it put together and it really starts to work. It feels awesome. And a reminder, you can do this.